Funding for this program was provided in part by the Wyoming Public Television Endowment and viewers like you.
Wyoming PBS and Wyoming Public Media present Election 2020, the Democratic U.S. House primary debate. Live from the Robert A. Peck Arts Center on the campus of Central Wyoming College.
Good evening and welcome to Central Wyoming College. We're in the Robert A. Peck Theater. I'm Craig Blumenshine from Wyoming PBS, and thank you for joining us for this 2020 U.S. House of Representatives Democratic primary debate. I'm Craig Blumenshine from Wyoming PBS. Joining me this evening to ask questions of the candidates here tonight is Kamila Kudelska, the Northwestern Wyoming reporter for Wyoming Public Media. This is the last in our series of primary debates, and as we have in our previous debates, we are utilizing social distancing practices here this evening. Other than just a few family members and campaign staffers, there is not a live studio audience for tonight's debate.
Two of the three candidates for the Democratic ticket for the U.S. House are with us this evening, including Lynette and Carl Beach. Candidate Carl Hafner chose not to attend either in person or virtually, citing coronavirus concerns and the lack of available internet bandwidth. Both of the candidates with us this evening have been briefed on the ground rules for tonight's debates, and the order that the candidates will take questions was randomly chosen prior to the debate. Also, we want our listeners and viewers to know that there will be no U.S. House Republican primary debate this year. While Representative Liz Cheney accepted our invitation and agreed to debate during the primary season, her opponent, Blake Stanley, has declined our invitation.
We're about ready to begin. The first question, in lieu of opening statements, is similar to what we have utilized in the last two other primary debates. And the questions that follow have been created from a pool of questions submitted by Wyoming Public Radio listeners and viewers of Wyoming PBS, and also from Kamila and myself. The candidates have not seen those questions. Candidates, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you're ready, let's go ahead and begin. Ms. Grable, the first question is for you. In your view, what is the most important issue where you feel you can make a difference for Wyoming in 2021?
Well, thank you for the question, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Really quickly, I feel like I can make an impact for Wyoming in 2021 in COVID relief initiatives. I believe that is the most important thing moving forward in our country. I believe that Americans need something sustainable to move forward, and not just bailouts for big corporations, but for people of everyday people in our communities to be represented in policy and in leadership. I also believe healthcare is imperative to get into the forefront of policy, but I also want to make sure that it's equitable for all Americans.
Thank you. Mr. Beach?
Thank you for the question, and thank you everyone for tuning in. The last 6 months have taught us anything is that our healthcare system truly needs immediate attention and reform. From the state of Wyoming not expanding Medicare, to the national marketplace not reopening enrollment, to people losing their affordable insurance from their employers, we have left thousands of people across our state and nation in a precarious position in the midst of a global pandemic. This is not an economic concern. This is an ethical and a human rights concern. A nation's greatness can truly be measured by how well it takes care of its people. And we are failing in this regard when we lead in the world with only one significant healthcare indicator: cost. Adopting a single-payer or universal healthcare system would provide more equitable care across the United States and would be especially beneficial for rural areas like here in Wyoming. This is the and
thank you.
So today, more than 2 million Americans are in prison. Many argue that there is a disproportionate number of disproportionate number of whom are people of color or have a mental illness. What can be done to fix the system?
Yeah, this is a huge concern in Wyoming as well. Despite the fact that 82% of Wyoming's population is reported as Caucasian, 25% of our prison system is people of color. This is something that needs to be addressed both systemically and socially. Right? we've seen across the nation a call for police reform, prison reform, and social justice. What I find so incredibly disheartening is how our current leaders have done so little to address this issue in Washington. And when it has been addressed, it's been mostly along the typical from 1960s onwards law and order situation or line. To me, this takes a concerted effort at the local, state, and national level to look at ways in which I applaud the House for passing an act, the George Floyd Justice Act, that really identified certain areas that we need to work on in terms of our social and justice system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. Ms. Grable?
Social justice is imperative to address in our country. Social justice is the work that I do. I have educated on undoing racism, institutionalized racism, systemic racism, and this plays a huge role in our pathway from our youth to the prison system. There's a lot of things to unfold when we address this issue. It takes a lot of different expertise to come to the table, and even law enforcement, even people who work in the justice system. We all need to come together on how do we fix this, but we have to address the issue that institutionalized racism is an issue not only in the state of Wyoming, but in our country. I also believe we need to start talking about mental health. I have family of suicide. I have family who struggled with PTSD, and I've trained on trauma-informed care. Mental illness is something that we need to address and need to stop being on the back burner in the U.S. because our people matter.
Thank you. Mr. Beach, you have an additional 30 seconds if you'd like the time.
No, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay. Next question is for you, Ms. Grable, from Kamila.
What would you do to ensure equal pay for equal work?
This is a great topic, and I thank you for the question. Being a woman who has worked in different industries throughout this country, we have to see equal pay for our women versus our men pay. We are aware that the pay and the salaries differentiate when it comes to women in leadership that holds the same degree than a man. Again, this is something that needs to be talked about on a policy level. We understand this is an issue in our society, but women who hold degrees and have the same amount of education and experience must have equal pay in regards to versus men. This is something that I am passionate about. This is something as a woman and as a woman leader, this is something that it would be addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Beach?
Yeah, this is something I think is amazing to think about, that we are still, 50, 60 years later, still making this fight, right? That this is something that we continue to see, particularly in Wyoming again, a disproportion between the pay for men and the pay for women. We need to take a moment to really address, as Lynette said, the issues systemically, right? The systematic ways in which our institutions either build up barriers or break them down. As a white male, this is obviously something that's really reflective for me. Being in a position like this, or even being up on this stage and looking at the ways in which my own privilege allows me to be here. So for me, it really means like looking at those institutions and saying, okay, where is it that we see those institutions, again, either propagating people and allowing them access to the jobs and to the pay that they require, or where is it we still culturally and institutionally putting up those barriers? And if we can identify those, we can then begin to break them down.
Ms. Grable, you have an additional 30 seconds if you'd like.
I would just like to add and piggyback what Carl Beach has stated. It is true. It is something that we have to address. It is something that we need to recognize. I think it's something, again, like I stated before, it is put on the back burner. But the rate of single mothers in this nation is the highest rate that has ever been. And if we talk about single mothers, me being a divorced single mother, I know it's imperative that with the expertise and the background that women have in our economic, that we be equal.
Thank you. Mr. Beach, this question is to you from me. And I want to read you the lead paragraph from an Associated Press story just this morning. Having endured what was surely a record-shattering slump last quarter, the United States economy faces a dim outlook as a resurgent coronavirus intensifies doubts about any sustained recovery for the rest of the year. What will your role be in Congress in helping our country and Wyoming restore its economy?
Yeah, this is obviously an issue that's on everyone's mind. One thing that we have to recognize is that although we may have had a strong economy leading up to the COVID-19 crisis, we did not have a resilient one. And a resilient economy is almost automatically strong, but a strong economy is not automatically resilient. And that goes back to many different factors, including not having a national manufacturing base, vulnerable supply chains, a modernized social safety nets that take too long to implement, and a lack, as I said at the beginning of this forum, of a national healthcare system that truly puts people in precarious positions. So a resilient economy really needs to move past the neoliberal policies, economic policies we've seen for the past 40 years that continually bring wealth to certain individuals while leaving the middle class and lower class out. And then we see this constant fluctuation almost every 10 years. .com, the housing crisis, and now COVID-19. Resilient economy is what we need.
Thank you. Ms. Grable?
Yes, like I stated before, COVID-19 and relief efforts in policy is what needs to be addressed moving forward in 2021. Another topic of COVID-19 is paid leave for COVID-19 employers. We have to make sure that major corporations can contribute, but I think it's the responsibility of Congress to pass legislation to make sure that all employers have COVID-19 medical leave. That's another issue that I would like to bring up. Bringing up, but I also believe that our ranchers need to be considered. The Ranchers Protection Act that has been recently proposed by Senator Tesler, I believe is a good act to move forward in our ranchers and our agriculture economy for Wyoming and in the states.
Thank you. Mr. Beach, additional time if you would like.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that, we often hear from the president, from Congress, from other parts of our nation that this is a war, that there's an invisible enemy that we're attacking. And so I believe my role in Congress is also to effectively react to that situation. And that means implementing a more progressive tax system that we saw after World War II and that we saw all the way up until the 1970s. That would help to regenerate and rejuvenate our economy.
Thank you. Ms. Grable, the next question begins with you. Representative John Lewis was mourned, revered, and celebrated at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta today as he returned to a sacred place imbued with civil rights history. What does his legacy mean to you, and what do you believe it means to Wyoming?
Having been able to meet Representative John Lewis, he is absolutely the model, I believe, that is for social justice and those who hold those pillars of social justice. He is a personal hero of mine, but all my efforts on working on Missing Murdered Indigenous Women, Savannah's Act and the Not Invisible Act, when I was on Capitol Hill, he supported that. And I was honored that he did. He understands the social injustices that Native Americans have faced throughout the country and what we faced in our MMIW movement. I believe we can learn a lot from Representative John Lewis. His integrity was top notch. In his honor, I believe that we owe it to Representative John Lewis to not only move the social justice path forward, but to also to implement that into our communities, both rural and urban.
Mr. Beach?
Yeah. Watching today, the funeral of John Lewis was so impactful and so emotional, I think, for many people around the nation. And it was because of what Lynette just spoke about, his integrity and his consistent fighting for the rights of people across this nation. So just like George Floyd, he was almost a symbol to start out with in a movement to truly look at equality and to continually look at, again, the systems that propagate inequality. So for me, he's such a model of a person that fights all the way up until the end. And again, his integrity, his determination is something that any of us can admire now, tomorrow, and for future generations. Again, it was great to see all the different presidents and people pay tribute to such a great man.
Ms. Grable, additional time if you'd like.
I'd just like to reiterate, the importance of following his model. I think we have, again, a lot to learn from Representative John Lewis. And I also admired his boldness to come forward against policies that seems to stay the same in Washington, D.C., but he went against bold initiatives, and this is what I plan to do.
Thank you. Candidates, we're going to switch it up a little bit with what we call the lightning round. Again, this is a time when we'll offer to you one-word or few-word phrases. You'll have just 20 seconds to respond with no rebuttal period. So, Kamila will give the first topic to Mr. Beach.
Federal debt.
Federal debt, yeah. A necessary component at this moment, but something to work on and alleviate towards the future. Again, utilizing a progressive tax structure and targeting areas that need to be cut without sacrificing the social safety nets that are in place for all of us.
Ms. Grable?
I think federal debt needs to be revamped and looked at. I know that we spend a lot dishing out, but there's some other places that is lacking, and that is always public education. I would like to see some of those fundings to be allocated more towards our education, more towards our future, and more towards our generations moving ahead.
Thank you. Next topic is for you, Ms. Grable, from Kamila.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matters. As a woman of color and as a mother of African American children, there is no stronger initiative in this country than Black Lives Movement. Black Lives Matter does not mean that your lives don't matter. Black Lives Matters meaning that we want an equitable and justice society so that we can live in peace and united together.
Thank you. Mr. Beach?
Yeah, Black Lives Matter brought about 7 years ago was instrumental in bringing attention to something that was necessary. And a lot of people are criticizing the phrase, but just like defund the police, these are phrases that are controversial for a particular reason, and that is to bring attention to an issue that needs to be addressed quickly and efficiently. I support Black Lives Matter and will never say otherwise.
Mr. Beach, this topic is for you. Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi, sometimes I can't believe she's 80 years old. I mean, she just keeps going. And I think that, again, she exhibits strong leadership. She stands up for herself and for her fellow Congress people. She's inspirational in that way. And when you look at her career and her life, she has dedicated a significant portion and done some amazing things for this country.
Ms. Grable?
Nancy Pelosi is another person that I admire. She takes no mess, and she goes ahead above for bold initiatives. Most people don't understand that Pelosi has a story, and this is what drives and compels her. I, too, have a story that has and what compels me to drive to create change. She worked her way up in the Democratic Party and leadership, and she's definitely admirable.
Thank you. Ms. Grable, this topic is for you. $600 per week.
As we look at our society right now with COVID-19 impacting our communities, $600 a week or even a little bit additional after that is not enough to sustain our families. Again, this is something that I gear to address if elected, but COVID-19 relief packages for the working class is imperative to move on.
The CARES Act put us on this train and we need to continue it. It's something that needs to continue on and not run out. I'm supportive of the HEROES Act as well and the continuation of this $600 a month. I think it's necessary. There could have been other directions we could have gone in, but we chose this direction and we need to continue it.
Thank you. Next topic for Mr. Beach from Kamila.
Voting rights.
Voting rights. Again, as we saw with, we talked about with John Lewis, we need to ensure that voting is as easy and accessible to as many people as possible. Voting is a right in this country, and it's something that needs to be allowed to occur on multiple levels. In this current situation, voting by mail is imperative, and it's, since it's shown not to be fraudulent, and there's no evidence otherwise, we need to continue it. Thank you.
Ms. Grable?
In 2018, I had a campaign team, then we door knocked and we phone baked, and we helped get Representative Andy Clifford elected in House District 33. One of the things that we experienced when going to our local county clerk's office is that we were told that we could not early register and early vote in the Lander County clerk's office. We were told to go on the reservation to do so, and there was no office to do so. So voting equality is something that we need to talk about and address in our country.
Thank you. Candidates, we're going to resume our normal questions here, and I want to tell our viewers that this is just a 30-minute debate with just two candidates. Our effort was to try to equalize the time each candidate had in answering questions, regardless if there were 5 or 6 people on stage or just 2 here tonight. So this will be a quick debate, but we have more to do. Kamila, for Ms. Grable.
The Trump administration has been getting tough on China and has been working to get back manufacturing jobs that were lost to China. What have you thought of that policy, and what should be done going forward?
I think that we need to address our trade deals, especially with China and others. I think that the trade deals with tariff has impacted our local ranchers and agriculture, not just in Wyoming, but nationwide. These trade deals affects local families and families nationwide. We need to look at our trade deals. We need to sit down. We need to be revamped. We need to get connected back to our allies. And again, this is something that was created by the current administration of division. I'm not here for division. I'm here to unite us all so that all families have equal way of living.
Thank you, Mr. Beach.
Yeah, I completely agree. When we look at the Trump administration's getting tough on China, it actually ended up hurting our communities most. Tariffs are not what is portrayed by Donald Trump, and any economist is going to tell you the same thing. It ends up putting the cost onto importers and other businesses in different ways. It does not punish or somehow deter China. Now, if you want to use it as a policy for political purposes, fine, but I think it needs to be honestly portrayed that way. So again, I agree with the idea of bringing manufacturing back to the United States, but to put it into this light that it's somehow this constant struggle and non-diplomatic relationship is faulty and wrong. And so I think we need to be more honest about what we're actually doing and actually bring back that manufacturer, because it actually helps our nation move forward and, as Lynette said, unites us, not divides us across the world or ostracizes our other allies across the world.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. Ms. Grable?
No, I'm good.
Okay. This will be our final long-form question. Mr. Beach, this is for you from me. There is currently a $1 trillion program to modernize America's nuclear weapons infrastructure, including bombers, submarines, and ICBM missiles, many of which are controlled by F.E. Warren Air Force Base here in Wyoming. Do you think that spending is necessary and makes us safer, or would you like to cut that spending to prioritize other programs?
Again, yeah, the military, obviously, as a defense mechanism and a protection mechanism is necessary, and that's something that we cannot deny. We need to allow for funding. We need to allow for, the development of different programs. However, we got to be really smart about which programs we're going to put money into. The recent House Armed Services Committee just did a $740 billion military spending package. That's 3 times more than China. It's 15 times more than Russia. And these are supposed to be our nearest threats. I actually think that money needs to be spent more on cybersecurity, which is where we're going to see more of where attacks are going to come from, where we're going to see more of the modern warfare, if you want to call it that, happening. And again, that means really keying in on what are realistic threats and not just creating things just because they need to go. So no, I don't think it's the best way forward. I think we need to work towards denuclearization, not proliferation.
Thank you. Ms. Grable?
I concur with Carl Beach. I believe that, although I don't have all the numbers in front of me, however, I do believe the spending on military is expensive. I think, like I stated earlier, that some of our funding can be allocated to other things that have been put on the back burner. However, prioritizing Americans' lives and our soldiers across the seas is also imperative to make sure that we protect them and protect the American people. However, like Mr. Beach said, our cyber safety is turning into a modernized warfare. This is something we need to address, and this is something that's not talked about as much. And we need to continue to talk about it. We need to continue to have conversations about it. We need to have plans and meetings to make sure that these things are set in place, that not only that we are protected as American people, but we look at the future as far as cyber safety.
Thank you, Ms. Grable. Mr. Beach?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. Candidates, it's time for your closing statements, and we do these in reverse order of the order that we asked you the first question. So, Mr. Beach, time is yours.
Great. Thank you again for this opportunity and the chance to provide some more background and information on my positions, as well as how I can hopefully represent the great state of Wyoming. Although the last few months have been incredibly difficult, I truly see that what we've faced as a nation and as a state as an opportunity. To rethink our healthcare system, to rethink our economy, and to rethink how we treat each other individually and institutionally. One of the values I identified when I started this campaign was community. And I consider Wyoming to be just that, a large community. It's the only state I know that when you're traveling across the U.S., you see a Wyoming license plate, you actually look and see if you know that person. So this is why I'm running. I want to care for our community because I know what it means to be from Wyoming, and I feel I know how to move Wyoming forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Grable.
Oh, thank you again. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Lynette Grable. I am Hunkpapa Lakota, but I'm also Northern Arapaho and I reside here at the Wind River Indian Reservation. And I am running for U.S. House of Representatives. What makes me a good candidate is that I have a track record on creating change, both at the tribal level, federal, and state level. Last year, I proposed a Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Task Force to the Wyoming Governor Gordon, and I was so honored that he obliged. This is what I do. I bring everybody to the table. I have a history of bipartisanship efforts. I reach across the aisle because I believe that we are stronger when we work together. I want to create change for the underrepresented. I want to create change for the underserved, and I want to create change for the working class. Why? Because I am the working class. I hope you can reveal my compassion and my love for the community because it's something I have always done for the last 15 years. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you so very much for participating in tonight's debate. We want to remind Wyoming voters to get to the polls on primary election day, August 18th. And my sincere thanks to Joanna Kale, who's off stage, who is our timekeeper this evening. Thank you again, Joanna. We appreciate your assistance. And I want to thank my colleague here tonight, Kamila Kudelska from Wyoming Public Radio, for assisting me. Thank you very much. Also, Paul Montoya from Wyoming Public Media for handling the audio for tonight's debate, and to Kyle Nikoloff again for handling the video production of tonight's debate. Thanks also to Central Wyoming College for their assistance this evening. And as a reminder, you can see this debate again online at WyomingPBS on our YouTube page. We'll see you next during the general election debates when that season begins. Debates are planned both for U.S. House and U.S. Senate races. From all of us here at the Robert A. Peck Theater on the campus of Central Wyoming College, thank you so much for joining us, and have a good evening.